doing? What are you doing, Bo? What are you doing, Loki? I'll be up here in a few. Now, we all know the myth, the story of Odin giving up his eye to Mimir and hanging himself for 9 days in Yggdrasil. We also know the aspects of his two ravens, Hugin and Munin, and how he always feared that Munin would never return on his daily journey, Munin representing memory. If we want to shift to Southern Europe, there's the tale of Athena's birth, how her father Zeus had swallowed Metis, who was pregnant with Athena at the time. And over time, how Zeus developed these terrible splitting headaches. And how finally he breaks down and he employs the help of Hermes and Hephaestus. And Hermes recommends that Hephaestus, the blacksmith, split open Zeus's head to alleviate the tremendous pressure. And once he does this, Athena pops out of Zeus's forehead, fully clothed, fully armed, fully grown. There's a lot of different interpretations of our stories, fairy tales, and myths. One interesting interpretation of Athena's birth that I'm fascinated by is the idea that the birth of Athena represented what you could say the thought process. Zeus, when he had eaten Metis, what he was doing was he was listening to knowledge that was being given to him, transmitted to him from another person, another being. Over time, he took this knowledge and in his mind, he formulated his own idea, his own ideal. It took lots of work. It gave him a headache. Finally, when the time was right, the idea sprang forth from his mind, fully armed, fully clothed, ready to go. It's just an interesting interpretation I read one time. I do believe that the myths, the stories, our ancient stories, I believe a lot of them deal with reincarnation, but many of them deal with the thought process, with wisdom. Of course, some will disagree with this, you know. We all have our different interpretations. But today what I wanted to talk about was the nature of knowledge. I believe the word that they use is epistemology. And I'm sure there's many different opinions on this as well. Many different philosophical views. But from my own experience regarding the nature of knowledge, the knowledge that is most valuable to a person is the knowledge that they sacrifice something in order to obtain. But also knowledge that they were personally driven to acquire. In my own life, one of the best teachers that I ever had as a child was my 5th grade teacher, a man by the name of Mr. Street. I learned so many things from this man. He was a brilliant teacher. He even made English a subject that I found extremely boring and uninteresting in my youth. He made English extremely interesting. He did all sorts of creative writing with us. He always had these projects, but these projects encouraged us to be creative. It wasn't even like schoolwork. It wasn't just rote memorization. He was an excellent teacher, outstanding. My own father taught me how to play chess when I was 6 years old. He taught me many things about fishing, about baseball, about football. My father and my mother both stoked the fires of curiosity in me and my younger brother's minds when we were just little. There were a couple of other teachers I had when I were in high school. When I was in high school, I should say. I'm a hillbilly after all. I believe some foreigners speak English better than I do, more grammatically correct. But anyways, it is rare to find a decent teacher, I believe. When I was in high school, I actually wanted to become a teacher. My junior and senior year. That was my career path I had chosen for myself at that time. However, life happened. I went off to college, got into something else. But I always wanted to teach, and I think that's one reason why I make videos, because I feel not that I'm intellectually superior to anyone watching, but I do feel like I have some stories and some knowledge that is worth sharing. Whether you take the advice is, up to you. That's your choice. I'll leave that up to you. But I think this sort of satisfies that urge that I had long ago. I liked teaching my friends things growing up, and I liked learning as well, of course. I know between me and my father and my younger brother, we taught a lot of kids in my age group, my younger brother's age group, how to play chess. We taught many. And it was a good thing, to share knowledge and ideas. As I mentioned earlier, I went off to college when I finished high school. I started out wanting to be a physical therapist. I went to a private Christian college my first year. I didn't fit in at all at this private Christian college. It was about 45-50 minutes from where I was raised, up in Bristol, Tennessee. I lived on campus. All the kids there, these suburban and upper class white kids, they would either drive Lexuses, Land Rovers, BMWs, Mercedes, and here comes me pulling up in a 1985 Camaro that would backfire every time I shift into second gear. I had no business going to college. I went to that college for a year and then I transferred to East Tennessee State University, a public college, because it was much cheaper. When I transferred there, I decided to go into business, namely finance and accounting. I chose these because I thought they were easy, which they were. I did the bare minimum in college to make a C+ in my classes so I could advance. I had no business going to college. I've never used my degree in finance. Never will. I drive a truck for a living. The only things that I learned in college, basically, I learned about narcotics, fucking and fighting. That's the only things I really learned about. Which could be valuable knowledge, you could say. Me going to college, I sacrificed something. A lot of things. I gave up time and money. And I learned a lot of bad habits, you could say. But I had no business going to college. I would have been much better off going to a trade school And I know some people, some of the prominent people here in the DR, says that the right wing has fully given up academia, have ceded the territory to the leftists. My thoughts to this is really, who fucking cares? This was lost long ago, decades ago, many decades ago. This sort of thing started happening. The ideas for it were formulated probably in the late 19th century, the early 20th century, and then came to fruition at the end of World War II. And it has only grown exponentially ever since. So I see no sense in a lot of young people, a lot of young men especially, wasting their time, wasting their money, going to college, because a college degree is fucking useless a lot of times nowadays. I was not the first person in my family to attend college and finish. My father went into the trades, my younger brother went into the trades. My mother never went to college. My maternal grandparents never went to college either, but my paternal grandfather Ford, he went to college while he was in the military, and he had graduated in 1954 with a degree in medicine. He was a medic, among other things, during his years in the military. But back then, going to college and receiving a degree was extremely valuable. It was something worthy of notoriety, you could say. Nowadays, they encourage every fucking retard out there to go to college. So I see no problem with young men, young families encouraging their young men to go get a trade. Even young women. You send your daughter off to college, a pretty, intelligent Aryan girl, there's a possibility she's going to come back a blue-haired dyke. Who the fuck wants that? With a degree in gender studies, you know. See, in college I gave up many things, but I did not have the personal drive to acquire said knowledge. I gave up things stupidly, but I didn't have the second part, the most critical part, the critical drive. During the years of meth, I learned many things. I learned many things about human nature, about myself. I learned a lot of things about crime, robbery, thieving. I learned many things. And I had some hard-fought lessons, some tough lessons. But that's part of life. That's part of life. And over the last 3 years, since I've started this channel, since I got off the drugs, I've learned many more things. I've read many books, although I know in my previous video I talked about how you shouldn't just read all the time. I didn't mean to sound a little dismissive of that, because books are valuable. And we do need to read, of course. But I think the best way to learn, you can learn a lot just by observing things. You learn by doing things. Experience overall is the best teacher. So you've got to be balanced. You can't just read all the time. You can't be a nerd that just sits inside reading all the time. You have to get out there and live. And you see, a lot of this knowledge that I've acquired now, I've sacrificed a little bit. I sacrificed time, spend money on books. But what separates this knowledge that I've acquired on the history of American white nationalism, our people's history here and abroad, criminal knowledge that I'm trying to apply to sort of give a sort of praxis, I guess you could say, sort of worldview. Even though I'm not engaged anymore in criminal activity, I do think that this knowledge, there's a time coming where it will prove invaluable. Not encouraging anyone to do anything illegal, but I do think that those of us watching this, we are tottering on the edge of, on the frontier of what's legal and illegal. I've explained this in other videos. I don't want to waste time going down that tangent. But what separates this, what I do now, from the knowledge, the trivial knowledge that I have forgotten most of, that I gained in college, what separates it is the personal drive to acquire this knowledge. So you have to have both to acquire knowledge that is worthwhile. And then there's also pragmatic knowledge. Learning how to work on your own vehicle, learning how to grow things, learning how to fish, to hunt, all these things. That is pragmatic knowledge. Pragmatic knowledge is extremely valuable. And I believe kids, young men going to a trade school, you get a lot more pragmatic knowledge than you would going to a 4-year university. But in my eyes, that's the nature of knowledge. The nature of knowledge, you have to have these two critical components. You have to give up something, and you have to have the personal drive to be interested, to have this knowledge, the acquisition of it, be appealing to you. And I do believe this: the day you quit learning is the day you die. Because if you quit learning, you stagnate. Stagnation leads to complacency, and stagnation and complacency lead to death. Thank y'all for watching. Bye-bye.